Hi, I'm Chef Leo.
Hi, I'm Chef Theo, and this is The Confessions of a Private Chef. Hey, Chef, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I used to say, God damn, I'm tired, or, I'm just, I'm okay, but I figured no one really gives a shit, if you're tired or not. So, and I am doing a lot better. I'm doing great. Health is better. I am more motivated to do more things. I do have ADHD, so I'm constantly doing something. But with this new podcast that we started a little bit over a month and a half ago, it's been made me feel like I've got something else to live for. Get up in the morning, I check the stats. I love to see that we make a difference with other people whenever they reach out and say, "Oh, I love what you're doing locally." And we have people coming in from or messaging from Bernie, and I was telling our last guest that they feel like they're locals from Fredericksburg. They're saying, "I love what you do. I love what you're doing with the local community," and so it's cool to install, put in people's mind that they feel like they're even part of our community, even though they live like half an hour, an hour away. So that's really cool. So yeah, I'm doing great for that reason. And because we have an amazing guest today. Two amazing guests.
Well, just to touch on that real quick, when you and I first started this, one of our visions was to start a community.
Yeah.
So it's happening, man. It's so exciting.
It's pretty sweet.
It's very cool. But yeah, our two guests, very excited. We have Taylor Collins from Rome Ranch.
Which is we're not going to say the other one isn't as important, but this is the person we really wanted to focus on today. We invited him, but then we thought, let's create some synergy with another badass guest.
Another badass.
Yeah.
Jay from Cast Iron.
And Jay, and I'm afraid always to pronounce Jay's last name.
That's why I shied away from it.
I know. Say it for us again.
Jay Mollenkrat.
There you go, dude.
Yeah, I want to say something else sometimes, but yeah, that's why I don't say it.
A lot of things.
Yeah.
I've heard most of them.
Oh, yeah. All right, so, but Taylor, this is my first time meeting you, and it's a pleasure to have you here. It's, the only thing I know about y'all is what I've read, what I've seen online, social media, and I just put, two and two together the other day when I was at buying some microgreens over at Fresh Pickens, and I said, meat looks great, and just saw the branding, and not until I opened up the website and I saw the brand there, it's like, oh, okay, that's who it is. And so I thought that was really, cool. So I'm dying to try it out. I know you brought something, I think, right?
Oh yeah, I hooked you guys up with some of my favorites.
I love it, man. That's going to be lunch today, so everybody's going to have to stick around, even if we have a bite a piece. I don't know how much you brought, man, but we're going to make it work. And,
cool. So, Taylor, give us a real quick kind of brief history about the ranch and how you got started in that aspect of your life.
Sure. Well, thank you guys for having me on the podcast and being in your presence. This is awesome. This is what it's all about. You nailed it. Community.
Oh, thanks.
You guys are my brothers and, like local.
Oh,
and
man, thanks.
Feel a good connection with y'all. So, we, growing up, I'm a first generation land steward. I didn't have any pre-exposure to any kind of agricultural lifestyle growing up as a kid. I grew up in Austin.
Yeah.
And my great-grandparents were from Austin, so multiple generations from Austin. And food was a big part of my life as a kid. And we grew up with a very standard kind of conventional American diet. The acronym is SAD.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I was the epitome of that. And it was just the generation growing up in the 80s. It was like, what do you want for dinner? Hot Pockets or Hamburger Helper? And it was all about convenience. It was all about efficiency in preparing meals and how inexpensive, how little amount of money you could pay for groceries to feed a family.
Right.
And that was the wrong focus. And there was tons of unintended consequences with that. And particular for me, it was my health growing up. I just constantly was getting sick, constantly getting injured. And it wasn't until college when I finally realized, got a little bit further separated from my home and started to recognize and appreciate food as this catalyst that has tremendous potential for putting you on a trajectory where you can live your best, most fulfilled life, be your truest version of yourself, as an expression of what you put in is what what comes out. And I met my wife, my girlfriend at the time, Katie Collins, who you guys will have to meet one day. And we got really into endurance sports. And so this kind of like, it's all part of the journey, all part of the tale. And so in this journey, I was studying exercise sports medicine, in pursuit of becoming a physical therapist. We were learning a lot about health and nutrition, competing at high levels. So we were doing Ironman triathlons. My wife won her first triathlon Ironman.
Oh, wow.
Like first time?
First time.
Oh, shit.
I mean, this is
Wow.
like how we roll. We're like, let's do a triathlon. Where should we start? Oh, fucking Ironman. And
That's the way you do it, man. Fuck.
I mean,
don't do it.
I have to talk. I got to lift my wife up, and you're like, well, how'd you do? And I thought I was going to fucking die in the bathroom. On the last probably 2 hours of that 14-hour day, I was in struggle bus, suffer town.
I mean, women go harder at everything. To be honest,
Dude.
I mean, dude, if they got to push a baby through that,
bro,
they're capable of anything else, bro.
It's
So,
all in the mind.
yeah,
And
yeah,
they're unbreakable
Oh,
forces
totally.
of nature.
yeah.
And so, yeah, my wife won, and then we kept, amplifying, pushing the bar, competing at higher levels, training at higher levels. And then we had this just absolute breakdown of our own health and well-being. And so conventional wisdom at the time was like, hey, we need to clean up our diet. Let's go to like this vegetarian plant-based diet. Holy moly, man. I wish my future self could have told my past life not to go there.
Yeah.
But we went plant-based, then we went vegetarian, then we went vegan, then we went raw food vegan.
Shit.
And it was the wrong direction. The pendulum was swinging the wrong way, and she was having tremendous health issues.
No.
Cataclysmic. At the age of 21, told she needed a total knee replacement.
Oh, shit.
Had exploratory surgery, was put on arthritis medicine for foreseeably the future of the rest of her life.
She went from like 20 to 80, like overnight.
Pretty
man.
much, bro. And we just were like so convinced, so focused in this narrow realm that we were eating the right way. And finally, we went to a holistic health practitioner who said, what do you guys, first question, like, what are you guys eating? And
Yeah.
we told him, and we were all proud and, sitting up straight. And this guy was like, you got it backwards. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go home and cook a ribeye, eat some bacon, but make sure it's grass-fed, pasture-raised. Cut out the raw foods, cook your vegetables, cook your grains. And it was kind of like a primordial version of paleo before paleo was a big thing.
Yeah.
And dude, this was years of pain and suffering for my wife, and it went away within a week.
Damn.
I mean,
crap.
complete resolution of symptoms, eating grass-fed, pasture-raised meat. And so
not to mention everybody making fun of you for the shit you were doing. You're from Austin, so you kind of like,
pretty
people
much,
are going to
bro. I did not fit in at my family gatherings, and just the methane production coming out of
Oh
our
my God.
belches and farts was
wow.
disgusting. I mean, that was a
man.
test of our relationship.
I'm glad you're not doing that now, especially since we're all enclosed in the studio.
I would not let. I would
Yeah.
hold it in
Oh,
unless
shit.
it's a safe space for.
No, you're safe with us, bro. That's fine. All right, let's keep on going. So then,
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, that's the foundation. We were vegans, and we were like on this wrong path, and then we made this radical pivot, and we actually had a vegan energy food company called Thunderbird Energetica. It's still at HEB and Central Market, Whole Foods, Natural Grocers, and I mean, we were so committed to this lifestyle, and then we had this revelation that it wasn't for everybody, and so we started packing meat on our endurance sports events. Like, I would cook bacon, I would cook burgers, I would create these meat protein bars and put them in our pockets on like 100-mile bike rides, and it was glorious. I mean, this
Damn.
was the next level of ascension and consciousness. It was awesome. And so we started a company called Epic, and Epic was like the first kind of meat-based protein bar to enter the market. And we grew that brand pretty quick. And I mean, like, coming from this weird culinary background that was like, shit, I mean, like, why wouldn't you put fruit and meat together in a bar form? That
No.
sounds pretty damn good to me.
Hell yeah, dude.
especially like dried fruit.
Yeah, bro,
Works for
dried
you.
fruit,
Yeah.
that's still how I cook. I mean, like, if I'm going to cook a burger, I'm going to put like some diced mangoes in there,
Yep.
and maybe some
Yep.
onions, and it rocks.
Heck yeah.
And so we started that company, and it blew up, and we thought we were on the track of like really defining what is optimal health for human nutrition. We thought it had to come down to like properly raised animals, eating the diets they were evolved to eat, living in the environments that they were biologically engineered to thrive in.
Mm-hmm.
And then we learned this third leg of the stool, which was the most important, which is you can't have optimum human nutrition without the foundational nutrition of the soil, whether you're plant-based or animal-based or anywhere in between. All fertility, all life forces emerge from the soil. And so we got into this regenerative movement, ended up selling Epic in 2007 16 to a company called General Mills, which was never, I mean, dude, when we started Epic, we used to just talk shit about General Mills
Of course.
exclusively.
I mean, the shit they sell.
Like they were the enemy. We were like, fuck General Mills. Like that was like our battle cry. But it was this really synergistic, wild opportunity where they were more interested in the mission, more interested in the legacy, the conversation around regenerative agriculture, understanding animal agriculture in general. And so we saw it as this opportunity to influence a really big multinational Fortune 500 company.
Mhm.
And then shortly after that, we bought Rome Ranch in Fredericksburg.
Right.
Awesome.
And that's where we are today, baby. Wouldn't want to be anywhere
No
else.
shit.
Heck
You're the
yeah.
best place, man. This is like the place to be. Not to mention, you say General Mills, man. I just see dollar signs. So it's like, fuck yeah, I'll sell you. You know, so I guess it was a great time to do it because, as you know, property just keeps on going up and up here in Fredericksburg in the area.
Bro. When
So
we-
how long has it been, like, since you've owned this property?
About 8 years.
so you hit it
we
just about
paid
time.
agricultural prices for
Yeah.
our land. Yeah, not development prices.
Yeah,
And
so now
thank
it's like,
God. But now,
you
yeah,
can't buy shit.
you can't, which is sad because there's such a important agricultural legacy and heritage of this
Mhm.
area. Like our forefathers, the people who settled this area, I mean, they were farmers and
Right.
ranchers. That's what this community was revolved around, and now
Yeah.
that's being outsourced and lost. which
Especially
is-
290. You know, you're on the other side of 290. I was looking at the map this morning where Rome Ranch is, but I remember living in Stonewall, being 13, 14 years old and driving that road, and all you saw were fields with either hay, sometimes corn, sometimes different squash or whatever. And now it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, you have grapevines and it looks pretty before the winery, but that's like 80% of what you see on 290 now. I'm not bashing it. I love the industry and I'm glad they're here, but there's very little for growth in the agricultural department now here in Fredericksburg, which really sucks balls.
it sucks. And dude,
Yeah.
fast forward, I mean, go back 150 years, what'd that look like?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was like the indigenous cultures that called this area home, they were 100% hunter gatherers.
Mhm.
Like there was no
Agreed.
iteration of plant-based agriculture because we live in a semi-arid, very harsh environment for
Yeah.
growing plants. And so the civilizations that sustain themselves here locally, they hunted bison, deer, I mean, foraged pecans, prickly pear cactus fruit, persimmons. And so it looks very different from that natural space now.
Yeah, we have plenty of proof of that with all the, our creek beds, tons of arrowheads, and just everywhere you go, you can pretty much dig something up every day. So, it was a big, source of, what they ate. So, and it's sad because the only bison or buffalo that I've seen is in Stonewall behind, those
The OBJ.
fences. Yeah, the OBJ. And it's sad because that's, I wish, yours were just roaming around like some of these fucking deers that we have running around the streets. But it's kind of, so, it's sad, bro. And I'm so
Yeah.
happy,
Those bison, they're called keystone species. And so they're ecosystem engineers where, this higher creative capacity of Mother Nature, of God or Source, designed this perfect animal to keep an entire ecosystem intact. I mean, like our most fertile food systems, our most fertile soils were deposited, cycled through millennia of bison. And so to strip them from a landscape that they have been a part of critically for thousands of years, I mean, of course, you're going to have unintended consequences. The landscape's going to change. Your natural resources will diminish. And so for us to put bison back on the land where they should be has just been a miracle. I mean, we see new species show up that are endemic to this area that no one else has seen. I mean, we have 2 bald eagles that live out on the ranch.
That's
Really?
cool. Yeah,
A
I've seen
golden
a couple
eagle.
times. Yeah,
I mean, things that you would find in zoo. We've had a mountain lion spotted out at the ranch.
that's so fucking cool.
And so it's just this beautiful synchrony and harmony of nature, putting those systems and cycles back in place. But it starts with the bison.
How the the population? How far did it degrade? I mean, how few animals did we get down to? Turn of the century. I was they hunted them and
yeah.
wasted lots and lots of animals,
Dude,
millions and millions of animals, not lots, but tons.
unbelievable.
But what kind of numbers did we get down to before
Somebody said,
growing
hey, we
and
knew.
stabilizing and,
Yeah.
and pure, that kind of thing? How bad did it get?
So the kind of the expert analysis of that is 40 to 60 million would have been the peak about 150 years ago. That number was a little bit artificially inflated because when Europeans first came to North America, they brought diseases, smallpox, things that wiped out about 90% of the indigenous population. And the indigenous population was the primary apex predator of the bison. So once the Indian population was decimated, the bison had this artificial spike in lack of predator pressure. And so the population blew up. But I mean, there was 40 to 60 million bison, 40 million elk, 30 million pronghorn, grizzly bears in freaking Texas. I mean, wolves in Texas. It was like the American Serengeti. It was unreal. So the landscape, it would have been unidentifiable to today. We're operating at such a fraction of a small percent of the capacity for life and systems that are conducive for life than what we were 150 years ago. But it's kind of, it breaks my heart, but also that's the potential we have to move forward and reclaim that.
Wow. That's amazing. Honestly.
And like, what about when they would move on? So like if they were, foraging here, they leave, go north, the herds, I imagine they kind of in groups-ish.
Yeah.
And then, so would it be a couple of years before they come back, or was it a yearly kind of migration that they would move back and forth, north-south?
Bingo. You tapped onto something important, which is the ecosystem needs that stimulus, that impulse from that animal, that herd density, but then more arguably important is the recovery and the rest. And so like, the last 2 years, it pretty much hasn't rained in Fredericksburg, Central Texas. Yeah. There wouldn't be bison here right now. They would be up north. They'd be high desert, high plains, and then they'd be coming back down once there was resources. And so kind of have broken the system by artificially keeping animals here year round. The right thing to do is get that recovery and that rest. And so the way that we manage our herd is different. We try to replicate that natural migratory behavior where we will cycle our animals through about 50 different pastures on our ranch, 900 acres. And between each pasture, it'll get either 6 months to 12 months of rest, kind of depending on the condition. But in a perfect system, if we could do this the right way, we'd bring in 5,000 bison for 3 days, and then they'd be gone, and they'd come back in 3 years. And that's where we'd stack the most gains.
Damn.
But I think just from a chef perspective, I think you guys will enjoy this. So some of my favorite local books, if you guys have ever read these, one is 9 Years with the Indians, and the other is Boy Captive. They sell them at like the Pioneer Museum.
No, I need to check them out.
These books are fucking awesome. They are firsthand accounts of little German boys that got stolen by Comanches and Apaches.
Oh, that's cool.
And so this is like historical nonfiction. I mean, it's a diary of their experience, and what they would eat was insane. Just from a culinary perspective, I mean, they ate when they had their, they would sometimes fast for 5 or 6 days.
Because they couldn't find anything?
They couldn't find anything.
Right.
They were being chased by Texas Rangers. They were raiding settlers. I mean, they were marauding. They were killing. It was insane. But when they would harvest a bison, the first thing they would do, they'd cut open the stomach, go into the rumen, and eat the inside of the rumen. And then they, of course, would go on to the liver, to the kidneys, to the heart, to the pancreas. All the stuff that we cherish today, like the ribeye, the tenderloin, the strips, they didn't give a shit about. They fed those to the dogs.
No shit.
Crazy.
And so, just bison are such an important historical component of this system, culturally and ecologically.
Damn.
Yeah, it makes me think of that scene in Dances with the Wolves when they
hell yeah,
he's hunting with the Indians and they kill that bison and they pull out, I don't know if it was the heart or the liver, and they give it to
Costner's
character, and he kind of looks at it and sinks his teeth into it.
Bro, so you guys will have to come out when we do our bison harvest. We do them in the cool season, but we eat the liver fresh off the animal. And I know y'all are probably like,
fuck that.
I'm gonna be sick that day.
Fuck.
But dude, it tastes like a gala apple coming right off an animal.
That's
liver it has texture, it has crunch, it tastes like a sweet apple. The kidneys taste like smoked meat. The testicles, raw, fresh off the animal, taste like oysters. It's unreal. It's like unlike anything you've ever had.
Oh, fuck yeah.
So we can get weird anytime you guys want to get weird.
I mean, we're weird already, man. So it doesn't fucking matter, man. We're there with you.
Just add to the story.
No, for sure, man. For sure. I think that's amazing. I had no idea. I mean, honestly, I'm a local, fourth generation. I had no idea you were doing what you were doing. So, to be able to reach even our locals with what we're doing today, it's like we hope that we can, teach them something different, man. Learn to appreciate, especially these locals that still have land that, what we're going to sell. We were talking about this yesterday. A lot of locals that do sell their land to developers, and then, they bitch about selling the land to developers and them moving in afterwards. I mean, there's so many opportunities, so many things that you can think of doing like you're doing, and you're giving not necessarily back to community, but also back to the land, which is impressive.
Yeah, no, there's about 30,000 independent family farms that are sold every year in the United States. And that's just loss of agricultural land. I mean, sometimes these are fourth, fifth generation people who this is their family legacy. This is their identity. And conventional industrial agriculture is just not conducive for small time producers. It's very expensive. There's a lot of risk. And there's a lot of people leaving this space, which in my opinion, I mean, that has everything to do with the resiliency, the strength of our country, of our small communities. Agriculture, the word culture is in there because it's community. It's the chefs, it's the butcher, it's the agrarian who's raising the food. It's the priest who prays over it. I mean, it's the children that nutrients are passed through their body and cycled, and it's the life force that holds people together. And so that's really what we're hoping to revitalize and inspire people and connect them back to land.
That is sweet. So going back to the animals that you raise, I mean, your bison is all grass fed. You don't give them anything else. You just let them do their thing, right?
Yeah.
So you don't walk out there with a hay bale thing, or you don't walk out there with a bag of grain, corn and stuff. What's so important about not feeding your animals these things?
I mean, it's just the architecture of creation. This is how animals have survived and excelled through millennia without human intervention. So to say that bison or cows, sheep or goats need grain to finish well or to put on weight or to taste good, that's just that's a narrative that I think is being pushed by big agriculture. But for me, I get more excited about like seasonal terroir. So like the change of the grasses, the different forbs and species you can have.
Yeah.
And so like, just so you get in kind of a contrast, though, in an industrial system where most meat is produced, that animal, even if they're on pasture, they're going to have limited resources. They're going to have maybe one or two different plant species to graze on. Whereas in a regenerative pasture like at Rome Ranch, we're targeting 300 species of plants. And so that animal is able to self-select. They have the intuition of what they need. They can self-medicate. Say they're low in iron or sulfur or phosphate or potassium. They can go find it.
Right.
And so the nutrient density of an animal that has that buffet of 300 options versus an animal that has one or two is superior when it comes to the health of the animal, but also the health of the end consumer. And I mean, some of the studies that are coming out right now about like phytonutrients, secondary, tertiary nutrients, it is mind blowing. Like here we are, a very sick community, a sick nation, like lifespan is decreasing, infertility problems. I mean, like the list goes on. Cancer rates are rising, and we have this superfood that's in the architecture again of some kind of higher creative force at our disposal, and we're just not honoring it.
Right. And when you bought your property, did you buy it with so many different species of plants and things, or did you have to introduce that to the land? Did you have to plant and grow this because you knew that the animal needed these supplements?
Yeah.
I mean,
the land, when we bought it, half of it had been farmed very conventionally, which is chemical extraction of Mother Nature. I mean, it was the surface of the moon by all practical purposes. There was no life in that system. There's no fertility. It had been degraded. And so the first thing we did was rolled out a bunch of hay, because rule number one in the hill country or most semi-arid lands is to cover bare soil, because you're ineffective at capturing rainfall. It's just too damn hot if you're not covering it. And so all the cycles of nature are in dysfunction. So cover the bare soil with rolling out hay, putting the bison on there to cycle that fertility, that carbon through their rumen, and then through their manure, inoculate the soil and start to feed the biological system. And so really focusing on that is where we started. And it's cool. I mean, like every square foot of soil, you can assume there's about 20 to 30,000 seeds in there, just waiting for the opportunity to express themselves. And it could be they need the stimulus, the biological catalyst that is the manure of a ruminant animal. Or maybe they just need some element from a manure patty. And then all these things start germinating. And so a lot of the things that are more desirable, the perennial deep-rooted grasses, dude, they're just coming up on their own.
That's crazy.
But it takes time.
I mean, because like on your website, you offer bison, you have beef, pork, chicken, turkey. So, I mean, is this what you mean by, they support each other in this type of environment on your ranch? I mean, is it everyone taking a shit and each shit contributing to certain things in the soil?
Yeah.
Or what do you mean by,
So the way that industrial agriculture is really focused on reductionist science, reductionist thinking. It's putting everything in a silo. And so the way we do things typically at scale is we have a single species of something, and we do that single species very well, but it's very energy intensive. But that's all synthetic. That's all man-made, because no natural ecosystem that functions on a high level on its own has a single species. That just doesn't exist. And so if you guys, like, I don't know, what's the most beautiful place you've ever been in your life?
Florence, Italy.
Okay, Florence, Italy. What about you?
The beach, Sal Padre. I don't know. It's the first thing that came to my mind.
Okay, Jay?
We were just in France, and we were going across the countryside there. Their farms and fields are incredible. They're beautiful.
And so, like, the things that you tap into when you're in those systems there's complexity, there's diversity. There's not a single species of anything. There's multiple birds, there's insects, there's mammals, there's reptiles. And so for us, what we're just trying to do is mimic that natural architecture of nature, having diversity, promoting biodiversity. And so when we're lacking in the natural system, so some of the native species that are now extinct, or the migratory species that aren't coming here because the resources have been diminished, we're using our farmed animals to replicate that. And so a really good demonstration of that is when our bison herd moves through a pasture. They'll be there for a day or two, and then we'll move them to the next pasture. And then we can put in turkeys, and the turkeys instinctively go to those bison patties, and they scratch through them, and they spread out that fertility. Now, instead of it's, a couple inches, square inches, it's square feet. And so they've spread out that fertility. They've also debugged it. So if there's, all ruminant animals are going to have parasites in them. And so they end that parasitic life cycle, because they're monogastrics. When they eat the larvae, it dies in their own stomach because of the acid content. And so then you have this pasture that has fertility spread. It's been debugged, and it's
cleaned,
ready for regrowth.
Yeah, you're not spraying shit. You're not harming any other.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't have to have pesticides, no herbicides. I mean, it's like so relieving, and we're just letting nature take the lead.
And you're not spending any money. That's the best part of this shit, man. I mean, it's like, can you imagine? I mean, we're paying so much. We go to the grocery store and we buy, Prime something, and the price is outrageous. But we buy because we need it as chefs, right? We buy whatever we need. We don't really, I don't never really look at prices anymore. I need it, I buy it.
Yeah.
So how does that help? Like, does it keep costs down and you provide better quality, product too? Or
yeah, it's better economically, but it's also better for the land, and it's better for the community. And another really good example that's very recent is we have an orchard out on the ranch, and every summer our orchard gets hammered by grasshoppers. I mean, it's insane. Like defoliate every single leaf on these trees.
Yeah, it's been bad this year too.
Kill the trees, take the bark off the trees. And so, like, what are your options? Well, spray pesticides, kill those insects. But then there's unintended consequences, because the pesticides also kill the soil biology that you're trying to foster.
Yeah.
And then it runs off the next time it flash floods, and it gets into our rivers and our creeks, and then our kids swim in pesticides, which has unintended consequences. And so we put our turkey flock into our orchard, and within 2 weeks, you can't find a damn grasshopper.
That's amazing.
For like half a mile radius. And so, yeah, we didn't spend a penny on that, and now our turkeys are getting fat.
Yeah.
Juicy.
That's badass.
Yeah, so that's the architecture of nature. That's, as close as we can get to trying to look into the wisdom that's there.
Yeah, and I never thought about, how that works. My son, he was a Texas Ranger, a park ranger for I don't know, I think it was 8-10 years. And at one time we were sitting down, and I saw a wasp doing something at a resort I was at, and he knew exactly the name of the insect, and every insect has I guess like a predator or something that relates to it. So, and how it controlled, itself throughout its life cycle in the area that you lived in. And by you telling me, well, the turkey fed on this, which took care of this, it's like mind blowing, because it sounds so fucking simple.
Yeah.
Right. That why isn't everyone doing this?
Right.
If you're teaching kids in certain areas and they know all this knowledge, why aren't they, applying this stuff?
Yeah.
Maybe because of the time. It takes time, like you were saying.
Yeah. Nature is complex. And just as a species, we like to really have these reductionist, simplistic kind of dominating mindsets in which we are in control. We don't like to be out of control.
Yeah.
But I think you benefit more by taking a step back and just realizing that everything in nature is connected. Like if you pull one string of a spider web, the whole spider web moves. We just read this book to my daughter called Because of an Acorn. Because of an acorn, there's a tree. Because of the tree, there's shade. Because of the shade, there's grass. Because of the grass, there's insects. Because of the insects, there's birds. Because of the birds, there's snakes. And because of the snakes, there's hawks. And because of the hawks, there's more acorns.
Yeah.
And then a forest emerges. And so that's how we need to really be thinking about the complexity of how we're doing and try to work within that parameter and that system.
God damn. Yeah. So simple, but yet so effective.
Right.
Right. And if we can just hold on to a little bit more of the land that's around us and create this thing, I mean, it's like heaven on earth, right?
Yeah.
You know, and everybody's feeling better, healthier, you know, eating better. So it's like, and of course, we're cooking more. We're
Love that.
using this product. Let's go back to like these animals that you have on the land. I mean, harvesting. How long do you have to wait before you harvest any of your animals?
Sure. We do bison harvest. We'll harvest about 30, 40 bison a year. And since we're grass fed, a bison, first of all, it's by all practical purposes, it is a wild species. It's more similar to an elk or a deer than it is to a cow, in which we've domesticated cows. So over thousands of years, we've selectively bred certain characteristics and features of cows that make them a little bit more docile, have better, more fat, better at gaining weight, all of these things that are for our own benefit, but that's never happened in a bison. And so a bison takes about a year longer to finish than a beef cow, especially on grass. So 2.5, 3 years, you're going to get an 800 or 900 pound bison.
For like from the day it's born to 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, 2.5, 3 years, you're going to get this beautiful, animal. The carcasses are incredible. The color of the meat, the fat, it is just heaven on earth. There's nothing better. And the turkeys, we harvest the turkeys every 6 to 8 months. And so they have a conventional turkey or conventional chicken. Chicken might only live 21 days in a factory model. So from the moment it's born to the moment it's harvested, 21 days.
Damn.
Never seen daylight. At the end of its life, it's so heavy that it can't even stand under its own weight. They have to harvest it because their organs are failing. So this is like the conventional industrial system that we're not a part of. But our turkeys, they have a lot longer of a time to live. So they eat more diversity of plants, insects, seeds, and the meat is so rich. When you eat one of our turkeys, it is, people would confuse it for deer or a ruminant animal because the meat is red from all those fixed phytonutrients and different chemical compounds.
How do you have to manage the turkeys? Do you have to put them up at night, or do they, roam free at night? And can they do that with the predators that we have here in the hill country?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the differentiation, we raise heritage breed turkeys. So these are descendants of wild birds that were captured at some point in the last thousands of years from all over Central and South America and North America. So they have, just like bison, all their wild instincts. So a domesticated turkey can't fly, can't run, can't scratch, can't lay eggs, can't breed. That's like your double-breasted white butterball that everyone eats for Thanksgiving.
I was thinking something else when he said
that. It's flavorless and it sucks. And that turkey had a terrible life. And that's what everyone eats for Thanksgiving. But our turkeys, they're by all practical purposes, wild animals. So we actually have wild Rio Grande toms that migrate to the property every year when the turkeys are breeding, and they breed all of our females. And then we hatch the eggs from that, and we have super cool genetic, really adapted featuristics that thrive in the hill country, and we don't do anything. Once they're about 2 months old, nothing kills them. They sleep on the top of post oak trees. We don't put them up at night. They kick ass. We have some guardian geese who are head of ranch security in the daytime, eyes on the sky, and then at night we have 2 guardian dogs. And we don't have any death loss. It's pretty incredible. Yeah,
that's crazy.
We have a lot of wild turkey out. You took me home the other day ago out towards Enchanted Rock. Every morning I walk out, I hear them, the gobbles. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Beautiful bird. They were almost our national mammal.
It really is.
Sorry, our national bird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I studied, French cuisine, but specialized in Oaxacan cuisine and learning that the turkey is national, it's like really the main bird that they would use in the harvest. Like on a daily basis in Oaxaca, Mexico, is like mind blowing because it was the thing. You eat mole. The main protein in mole is the turkey. Here we use chicken all the time in the dishes, but a true authentic mole has it's on turkey and most dishes. But then we introduce a lot of pork and stuff, and I love pork, man. So it's like, but turkey, people are like, oh, I used to eat turkey during Thanksgiving, man. I eat ground turkey 3 times a week.
Yeah,
that's me. I mean,
it's great. It's so underrated, and it's this species that thrives here. And so when I think about, well, what do I want to eat? What do I want to feed my family and my community? I want to feed them the apex, the pinnacle of strength, the pinnacle of resilience and resistance, the adaptability to our ecosystem, because that's the energy that I want to put back into our community. But yeah, if you're
into our bodies,
if you're eating just some conventional industrial sick animals, sick, sad animals, then that's the energy that we're feeding to our community.
Totally.
So that's how I kind of that's how we think about what animals we're going to raise and breed out at the ranch. They need to be like the apex species that can handle their own.
So we could be the apex in our community.
100%.
Yeah,
bro,
totally.
We got to breed more apexes.
Fuck yeah. Start on that tonight, bro.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I was seeing this new cookbook that came out. Chef Jesse Griffiths just wrote a turkey cookbook, a wild turkey cookbook that I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, I think that's it's cool to see chefs kind of going towards this space, this lane with
more natural,
wild animals. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, wild turkeys, they're just a super available resource. So why would we not utilize that to feed our population if they're here on their own accord?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I saw that you also you raise the bison to sell to people. Do you wait the 2.5 years before to sell, or are you selling them calves or?
We'll sell calves and yearlings. Sometimes people want to put together a starter herd, so we'll kind of design it for their context, their system. And, we do 1 or 2 of those a year. And really the benefit of buying bison from us is we move our animals every 1 to 2 days. And so they get the plan. And we have taught our animals how to stay behind a 2-strand electric fence.
How do you teach wild animals like bisons? But we just talked about, cattle, you raise them to be a certain way, but these are wild animals.
Yeah, I mean, they're smart. You have to start when they're young and impressionable and still moldable.
Yeah.
And then, so we started out with really good animals that were obedient, that got the regimen, followed the instructions. Anyone that was jumping over fences or knocking things down, they got harvested.
Yeah.
and so now we have these old cows, these moms that are just so badass, so wise, and they teach their kids if their little calves even go up to a line, they correct them.
Oh, wow.
And so, I mean, that's that intelligence of nature. That's what you want to just breed, that kind of intelligence, so that you're not constantly having to do the work.
Right. So it's in their genes.
Yeah. So is the breeding process very similar to cattle? You have one bull and a bunch of cows, or is it more open than that?
The breeding is different than cattle in that we have our bulls mixed in with our cows year round. And then they go into heat or they go into rut. The cows go into rut July 4th. Think about fireworks, God bless America, greatest holiday ever. Well, that's also when the bison bulls start, turning from friends to enemies, because now one thing's on their mind, and that's breeding cows, showing that dominant apex ability to be the alpha. And so then they breed during the hottest damn time of year in Central Texas, July, August, September. But it's just all synced up with the wisdom of nature, and they drop calves in the spring. And and so the bulls are with the cows year round, and we control their breeding just by their wild instincts. And in the spring, they have all their calves within a 2-week window, and we didn't do a single thing. That's awesome. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to play God. You just let it thing. Yeah,
just let it do its thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how old do some of the animals get? Like, what is like the oldest that y'all have on your ranch?
Sure. So we have some older cows. Our oldest cows are about 10 years old. And they have names, and they're the leaders. And so whenever we need to move the herd, we just get a cow to move through the gate, and then everyone else gets FOMO because they have that herd mentality. And when the bison herds were getting decimated by the hide hunters, at the turn of the century, it was really the cows that they would shoot first because they're matriarchs, so they control all the herd dynamics. And so they would sit there and they'd watch a herd of a couple 100,000 animals, and they'd study who the matriarchs were. And then those were the first animals that got shot.
Damn.
And when you would drop then, the whole confusion and chaos and the integrity of the herd was lost. And so then eventually someone else would step up and say, stranger danger, this is getting a little weird. And then that animal would get shot. So there was just mass confusion. And so for us, our cows they're going to live great long lives. They could live into their 20s or 30s.
Wow.
And they could have babies in their 30s, which is like an 80-year-old human having a baby.
Shit.
I mean, like some lady with no teeth and deaf and
You can do it.
and a wheelchair having a baby. I mean, that is like the ability for them to proliferate.
It's like Abraham. Yeah.
Next level MILF. Bro.
They're very fertile animals. But the bulls, they're all pretty young because we had some big ass bulls. We had some 7-8-year-old bulls, and they'll get up to 1,800, 2,000 pounds. But when they get that big, they're more concerned with dominating, asserting their alpha status than they are breeding. And so now we just breed younger bulls, and it works out real well for us.
So how does the quality of the meat change if you wait X amount of time? Because if you're harvesting, you said 1 or 2 a year of bison, or
About 30 a year.
30 a year. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So how many do you keep? How many do you let get that old in order,
Sure. The cows, breeding female, she'll live until she doesn't breed anymore, which in our system, I mean, I think they're going to be over 20 years old, which is kind of cool because they're my daughter's age. For the most part, they're most 7. So like when she's 20, when she's 30, there might still be some animals out there dropping calves that are as old as her, which is really neat. So they have really long lives. And in my opinion, and from a chef perspective, whenever someone comes out and they want to buy a whole animal for their family and they're like, which animal should I pick?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 10 out of 10, I'm like, if you want to get down with the best flavored meat, the highest nutrient density, pick an old cow.
Really?
Like maybe an older female that's not breeding anymore or who's empty this year. And that 100% of the time is where you want to go. I mean, because they've lived sometimes 2, 3, 4 times longer of a lifespan. And they've had that much more time to fix nutrients. And so their body's just storing it and holding on to it. And when you look at 2 carcasses side by side, say a 2-year-old and an 8-year-old, I mean, the 8-year-old is dreamy. Like the fat is orange. Mm-hmm. And the meat is just the darkest hue of red and purple. And it just tastes better. It has more complexity and flavor. The older animal.
Oh, the older
Yeah,
one.
it's like the chef, like in other parts of the world, like we eat lamb in America, but in other parts of the world, they're like, fuck lamb. It's all about mutton. Like it's about the older sheep.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I've gotten down with from a flavor perspective. I think older animals are underrated, underappreciated, but always taste better.
Good to know.
Yeah, that's the opposite of beef. The way we do it, maybe wrong, but that's the way you're usually eating young cows.
1,000%. Yeah, you get rewarded, kind of like that prime beef is going to be, well, certainly under 3 years old.
Yeah, your young steer.
Yeah, typically 2 years old. It could be even less if it's really highly industrialized. And so, I think there's just so much more encoded wisdom. There's more to eating food than just nourishing our body from like a physical perspective, but there's also, like we talked about, the strength of the animal, the resiliency, you get that. Right. But I think there's also just like this etheric energy, this connection to the ecosystem that you also consume. And so I always want to eat an older animal.
So, I mean, a lot of our listeners probably have never had bison, tried it. They do sell it, at HEB now, so it's pretty available to anyone. But I guess the first thing people will think it's gamey like everything else. If you were to describe it and make it appealing to someone, how would you describe it, for our customers that want to go out and try something, buy it?
Yeah, I think the word gamey, I get that all the time. People ask me, is this gamey? Mm-hmm. And my initial reaction is just to kind of cringe, because I think that is, when someone has that reaction, they just have a very simple palate. Like they're eating corn dogs and fucking
hot pockets.
Right.
And so for something that is that rich and that's complex, they don't know what to make of it. And then there's also the idea that most chefs and most people who buy bison, especially like a steak, they don't know how to cook it because it's different than cooking a beef ribeye, for example. Mm-hmm. And so you got to honor the animal. You really honor the animal through its life, is what we do. We raise the animal the right way, but then it's up to the chef to really like finish it in a way that people celebrate the gift of that animal. And so, yeah, I think when I read these historical accounts of even some of the first cowboys in Texas, they always preferred to eat bison than the wild longhorn beef cows that were out here. It was just the best meat. Everyone loved it. We've kind of lost that over time, but I think it's just more rich. It's more complex. It's leaner in general. And like we celebrate seasonal flavors with wine and coffee and talk about like terroir and specialty flavors that emerge from different regions of the country and the world. And we should be having those same conversations around meat. I think it's weird that we expect every single beef ribeye to taste the same.
Right.
And if it doesn't, we're pissed. Like that's not how the system should work.
Totally.
And we need to redirect that narrative and really talk about like, this was a 10-year-old cow. This 10-year-old cow lived in, the hill country, and it ate big bluestem and little bluestem and switchgrass, and it drank creek water. Like, this is the finest meat you can get.
Flavor profile, like doing a wine tasting. Oh, I've got some cherry, I've got cloves, I've got this coming out. And you can basically do the same thing with meat, cigars. These are things that people don't pair a lot of, don't pair things. But once you get to know your product and what and how you cook it, you can totally do the same thing. Like you're doing wine tasting. You can do the same thing with different cuts of meat. And I wish we did more of that here, but we don't. I mean, maybe we should start a trend. I don't know, but
say who's doing it? Who's cooking it here in Fredericksburg, or at least in the Hill Country or Austin, someplace where we could go and try, get a steak or a burger or something that we would say that you would recommend.
Yeah, of course. In Fredericksburg, Prometheus Pizza, those guys have a couple pizzas with some wild game from our ranch. And then in Austin, Hop Dottie, there's a big burger chain. I think there's 80 locations now. Yeah. Hop Dottie, you can get our beef and our bison on burger. Okay. True Foods Kitchen is also another chain throughout the Southwest. And so there's definitely some opportunities to get into it. And I would advise people, I'd recommend starting off with grind. I love grind. I think you can't go wrong, but like a bison burger is just absolutely legendary.
And now Chef Leo and Theo are going to have it.
There we go.
Yeah.
I'll try it.
Yeah, well, in a minute we will.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's cool too. I think that there's also an element, like you were talking about, just the density and in the proteins in the meat. The Native Americans and the people and the cowboys that you were talking about that were going on these long treks, they were finding, maybe there's another element to that where they're consuming this and, they're hardworking, they're going for days without, food. So maybe there's an element of that, that they were getting from the meat too, that, that's why they maybe kind of preferred it.
Yeah. That just reminded me, reading some of the Lewis and Clark stories, like the first trek across America to find out where the Pacific Ocean was. Those men ate 8 pounds of bison a day each.
Oh, geez.
I mean, that is how they sustained their bodies, sustained that trek. And that was like the most epic adventure in history. And so, yeah, I mean, it's certainly, I think when you hear the word superfood, you're like, I don't know, we've all been trained to think about these like weird berries from the Amazon and like this sea moss and all this shit. And I'm like, superfoods are animals that are adapted to your ecosystem, that have been raised the way that nature intended them to. I mean, from a vitamin, mineral complexity perspective, there's nothing that can touch that.
Yeah.
And so you can really nourish yourself. I mean, if you had to eat one food for the rest of your life to thrive, to be your best version of yourself, I mean, it'd be, for me, meat.
Yeah.
100%.
Me too, man. I'm a carnivore.
Yeah, hell yeah.
My daughter's a carnivore. One of my oldest daughters.
And another thing I love when we have events at the ranch, kind of talking about like our kids, is we'll start out and we'll just say, we have this group there, and maybe we're going to do a bison harvest that day, and just there'll be 30 or 40 people, and we explain that the meat that we're going to process today and we're going to eat today, that is going to become a part of us. If any of you are pregnant, this will become your child. Like literally, this gift, this is a transfer of energy from this animal into a developing part of your family. And so when you think about food that way, it's like, man, do I want my kid to take in the nutrients of a bison, or do I want them to take in the nutrients of what's some gross food?
Oh shit.
Like,
we're going back to the Hot Pocket, bro.
Yeah, Hot Pocket.
Hot Pocket.
We've hated a lot of Hot Pockets.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other horrible foods.
It's my favorite. I think we talked about it last time. My favorite that we used to get was the Kraft Parmesan cheese in the can that we'd have with our spaghetti. Like I think we all ate that back in the 80s and
yes.
stuff.
Hell
That
yeah.
stuff is like made out of cardboard or
Velveeta?
it's horrible.
Oh, that's.
I don't know, man.
I was thinking that I never even ate cheese probably until I was like 16 years old because we would get
Wow.
the yellow things that were individually wrapped.
Singles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was
Singles.
imitation cheese.
Yeah.
That wasn't even real
They
cheese.
don't even call it cheese because
No.
they have to call it singles because it's not really cheese.
So that's fucking crazy.
Government
Yeah.
cheese,
Yeah, like,
man.
do you want your kid to be made of imitation cheese?
Yeah.
That
Oh,
stuff
or
builds
Bison.
great on a smash burger, though.
It does.
Well, you're gonna have to go somewhere else, brother. I don't have that.
No,
here.
no, I don't either. My wife doesn't let me buy it even when I.
Oh my god. Oh,
Yeah.
Well, even the way you're describing that is the Native Americans definitely saw that, so that's kind of cool that, that's very full circle the way you explain it, where it's like we're, taking all of the nutrients and all of the soul basically of this animal and, we're putting it into us,
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, we don't think about bison as these living beings with souls. We think about them as souls that are in a body. And I mean, there is certainly when you do a field harvest, you can see that release of that soul. I mean, there's an expansion of light and of energy that everyone that's present there feels it. You're peeking beneath the veil
Awesome.
to the other side. And the whole herd responds. The whole herd will circle the downed animal, and every single member of the herd will touch it and lick it. And I mean, you're just witnessing the most powerful expansion of spiritual energy.
Religious
Something,
experience,
I,
man, of
I got
harvesting.
chills,
bigger.
literally.
I know, dude. I see it.
and I mean, that is
Praise the Lord.
like we need like that. That is a part of us. We're also spiritual beings. We're also souls, and so like that is how we nourish not only our body but our soul.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
God, man.
So how did you like take me back maybe a little bit, so you started doing these field harvest dinners or, these events. Do you remember the first one that you did? Because this is such a spiritual experience that you're talking about. Is there one that like sticks out in your mind that you can think back and you're like, wow, that was amazing?
The one that always sticks out in my mind is the worst one. And we explain to people we're like, they're in a conventional kill plant, a slaughter plant.
Mhm.
All the variables are controlled. Every chance of something going wrong has been removed. It's a mechanized system from start to finish. So we're outdoors, we're in nature. There's a million things that could go wrong. And we always preface that so that we accept that reality and that responsibility. And so for me, there was one event where it was a bad shot. And I mean, we've done hundreds of these, and this was a bad shot. And it was the only time it's ever happened. And that animal ran around, I mean, clinging for life. Its thirst for life was so strong. It bled and ran for about 45 minutes. And it was horrible to see. And I thought, holy moly, all these people are going to like go vegan after this event. They're going to be like, I'm never eating meat again. That was horrible. But it was such a gift to see that, because it was just like this realization, about death and like how to honor an animal and give them a death that is they deserve. And we missed the mark on that time, but it was such a powerful, moving experience for people there. And there was actually, it's not uncommon to have vegans come to our events. And that particular event, some girl came up to us afterwards and she's like, I haven't eaten meat in 10 years. And, I'm going to eat meat for the first time today. Off of that animal that suffered, but it was seeing the suffering and feeling it that really, I felt like, connected us to that process in a deeper way.
Yeah.
Where you had to feel something. Like, it's easy to shut down and it's easy to separate yourself from the life-giving forces that fuel us. And that's, I think, big agriculture wants you to do that. Big business, big pharma, big medical, like they want to separate you from health and from the source of health.
Mm-hmm.
And that day you could not separate. You were right
in the
there.
process.
Everyone
I
was
can see
tearing
that.
up.
When big plants kill animals, you don't, as a consumer, you don't think about the whole process that goes behind it. You just see the final product, and most people, you see the final product on the plate, not even the part where you have to prepare it. So it's a lot easier to consume something from that point of view, because we tend, as chefs, or me, chef, photographer, I want to make my dish look as sexy as possible and appealing to the person. So they eat with their eyes prior to ever biting into it. And so you disconnect yourself from the process. Like you said, if the story you said about the vegan, it's like, yeah, I totally get that. And even from a chef, I cook 90% of the stuff that I cook, I've eaten it before, so I don't even have a desire. I see a nice juicy steak at an event that I'm cooking at. Oh, it looks great. Here you go. But never do I have to desire to say, oh man, I'm going to tear into that thing. I can't wait. Hope that there's some leftovers. I never think that way because I'm so used to creating a product that gets from point A to point B. But, going to an event like yours and you just explaining, that to me, seeing it done right, great. I think I would still have that feeling, but, seeing something go through a process for 45 minutes before you almost, like there are areas where people worship cattle, they worship animals. So I can see the deep respect, because again, a totally religious experience. You can kind of use a metaphor to like certain religious things that have happened and go up to that point to then, now how things are and they play out in our lives today. So yeah, man, God, that is deep.
Yeah, you're not going to waste any meat from an animal that you witness firsthand the transition into death. You're going to honor every single morsel of it because you realize if you throw that away, it's a desecration of life.
Correct.
But we waste something like 40% of the food that is grown in this country. 40% of it goes in the trash, which is that right there is the issue when we talk about how do we feed a growing population? How do we, is regenerative scalable? And like all these weird conversations. Like, well, let's first start off by actually utilizing the food that we grow and stop throwing it away.
A lot of it gets thrown away just because it's ugly.
Right.
And that's, there is I believe there's a grocery store in Manhattan that sells like ugly
foods. I've seen that. Yeah.
And it's great, but you go to H-E-B and what are you doing? You're picking through every little damn thing, right? Because you're either cooking for someone and you want everything to look pretty. But some of the ripest things are the best in the world, right? So it's like people don't look at that. But yeah, discarding 40% is just fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a big problem. But no, I love shopping for the weird looking fruits.
Especially the ones that look all sensual, right? Peaches with big old things sticking out, look like clips.
Yeah, dude, I'm all about the weird peaches or peach where like a grasshopper was munching on it. I'm like, shit, that was probably a good peach. I'll take that one.
I'll try that one.
Yeah, well, and especially we always buy the seconds during season. By the seconds, peaches because we're putting them in cobbler. Or, we're not looking to eat it, right in our hand like an apple. So
and to be better,
you don't need one that looks good if you're going to put it right into a cobbler or make a jam.
Well,
or
when you're
something
talking
like
about
that.
peaches, man, they get harvested like when they're green, they turn color, but they stop producing sugars, right? So you're buying something big and that looks beautiful, but has no flavor. Mm-hmm. So until you wait for its peak and it's ripe, like number twos, they get picked when they're super ripe and mushy. And they're just full of sugar and flavor, man. So people don't know this. So it's like they overlook those peaches and buy the pretty sexy ones. That's like, fuck them.
Bro, that what you just said is the biggest unknown secret ever.
Totally.
There's a tool you can buy off of Amazon for like $30 called a handheld spectrometer.
Yeah.
And you can just squeeze the juice out of any fruit or vegetable onto this little reflective device and look at the sun. And you can see the Brix reading, which is the dissolved sugars.
Yep.
In a fresh peach, it's like 10 times more nutrients than a store-bought peach for that very reason that
when it's
harvested premature at
and
the store.
You have to harvest those for grocery so they can make transport, everything, like apples. They stored apples for how long?
Insane.
After they coat them with wax.
Insane. Yeah.
It's crazy, man. You can't do that shit with beef.
What about talking about land stewardship a little bit more? And I saw a stat, or was watching a show last night, and they were talking about here in the hill country, we get as much rain as Seattle every year. So 36 inches-ish that we get here, but it comes all at once. We're there, it rains all the time. We're here, when it rains, you feel like your house is going to get washed away.
Absolutely. Flash flood alley.
And retaining that water and spending time on that. So thoughts, one of the things that we all challenge with, I saw Leo was cutting cedar the other day at his mom's house, and I'm cutting cedar, consistently. Trying to keep that down, and there's schools of thought that you got to get rid of all of it, that it's soaking up the water, not letting the water get to the ground, etc. What are your thoughts on water management, cedar, land management stuff that you guys are doing?
Yeah, the biggest problem with rainfall in the hill country is that our land is hydrophobic to where the more organic matter or soil carbon that you can build, the more your soil becomes a sponge. And when we think about carbon, everyone thinks carbon's horrible. Like you think about climate change or carbon emissions, atmospheric legacy load of carbon. That carbon should be in the soil. It's cycled through the soil. That is the defining characteristic of healthy soil. And how you get that carbon in the soil is with green growing plants, whether it's grasses, forbs, legumes, trees. But for every 1% increase you can build in your soil, a single acre can hold up to 30,000 gallons of rainfall. Whereas, when we bought our ranch, we were less than 0.5% soil organic matter, less than 0.5% of carbon. Anytime it rained, we could, at the very most, capture only a fraction of that rain. Everything else would run off. And then topsoil would erode. And then, our rivers, after it rains out here, they're just like chocolate milk brown. That's not normal. And so for us, when we think about how do we effectively capture rainfall, it's how do we build a soil system that has porosity and that rain can come into and it holds it like a sponge. Because then after we get the deluge of 2 inches, well, it shuts off for 3 months and then it gets 100 degrees. And so if you can hold that water in the soil, you can grow plants during those times of droughts. And you also recharge the aquifer, which I think is the number one thing out here that we really need to, I'd say that's kind of like the topic that we don't want to talk about in the hill country, but that is the limiting factor as far as the future and the growth of this region. It's our aquifer health.
Yeah, so, you talk to people, 25 years ago. I mean, just even 5 years ago. They'd say, there used to be a spring there. There, and you go there, and there's nothing coming out, or seasonal spring or whatever. But it needs to be all the time, and we've drained most of that.
Yep, we're not putting back in what we're taking out. And for me, one of the biggest lessons of hope, this idea that Mother Nature's capacity for forgiveness is greater than our own species' ignorance, is when we bought our ranch, there's a creek called Cave Creek that runs through it. And the caves for the creek, the namesake, are on the ranch. And it wasn't even on the listing. It wasn't even said that this was on the ranch because it had been dry for over 80 years. No one ever remembered these things flowing. And I have some neighbors in my 80s that were like, yeah, that thing never, don't worry about it. But when you look at the old maps, so when the settlers were first coming here in the 1840s, 1850s, Cave Creek was one of 3 creeks on the Texas map of this region. So it was an important life source. It was a regional kind of like navigationable creek. It was sustained some of the early settlers, had probably a ton of abundance of wild game. And so the thought that it's dry and it's never going to run again is kind of off. And it only took 3 years of actually, for the first time, capturing rainfall to where our aquifer levels above the ranch have risen to where there's spring-fed water coming out of rocks.
Oh, dude, that's amazing.
Where no living person has ever recalled water coming from where it's coming from. And now we have 7 seeps in that creek, year-round water. And there's another creek too, 2 properties down the road that is now flowing year-round. And so that is, again, like this potential for forgiveness. It is just a blink of an eye. If you start to put the cycles of nature back in place, we don't even know the potential of what could happen in the hill country.
Just let us do its course, run its course. Let us do its thing, and don't tamper with it.
Right.
Right?
Just, get out of the way.
God damn.
So what did y'all do to promote the water coming back to that creek? Or did y'all do anything at all other than...
Yeah, so we had about 450 acres of the property that had been farmed very conventionally for 80 plus years. And so this is like bare soil, single species of crops, synthetic fertilizer, tractors and tills coming through every year, multiple times a year. And so that soil was so compacted and capped that rainfall couldn't get into it. It couldn't infiltrate. Every time it rained, it would run off the property. And when we bought the property, we had to get it resurveyed. And the survey came back that about 3 acres of the property had been eroded and lost into the Pedernales River. And so, I mean, I don't know what property goes for now. Like,
but to lose that much,
$40,000 times 3, that's a lot of money that got lost. And then a natural resource that's non-renewable. And then all the pollution that happens downstream in the Gulf, and all the chemicals were in that field now ran off into that river. I mean, it's terrible. And so what we did is we covered bare soil. That was principle number 1, focus number 1, and then get green growing plants to change the aggregate, change the porosity of the soil, and then increase the organic matter and the carbon to where it could actually infiltrate versus run off.
So how much time did it take for you to get to that point?
I mean, we're scratching the surface still. 3 years, we saw tremendous improvements. It was kind of a hockey stick where it was like really slow, really tempting to give up. And then once some of those cycles got put back in place, so bare soil was eliminated, there was more diverse plant species, there was green growing plants year round, summer and winter, then we saw tremendous improvements, and we're just barely seeing that right now.
You mentioned earlier just covering the bare with round bales, round bales out on it.
Round bales, I mean, that's highly effective. We have some, and that's kind of what we're doing now. Instead of the huge old farm fields, we still have spots that are really compacted where the water cycle is broken. And so we'll go out and roll out old rotten hay on it, maybe throw some seeds under it. And then after 2 or 3 rains, we have new grasses emerging. Before.
So to answer Jay's question, yes, cut the trees. No, cut the cedar. I mean, what do you think, bro?
Dude, it is complex. So when I first moved out to the hill country, I was in the camp of cut the fucking trees, wage war against cedars.
Yeah.
When you watch like Bamberger,
exactly,
his videos, you know,
he was my hero,
and he I think basically got rid of all cedar.
Got rid of everything. He talks about,
the worst piece of land he could find, etc. I've seen those videos.
No, I have not.
They're really pretty fascinating. And, and I think he started Church's Chicken, I think, and founded that, and made a bunch of money there, and then he bought this land over in Stonewall. And he talks about it. I bought the worst piece of land I could find, and I think one of the things he talks about is getting rid of all the cedar.
That was his big thing.
The grasses too, and that kind of stuff. But getting rid of cedar, so that's the big question: is do you get rid of it?
Yeah.
I've got some oak wilt. So it's like I don't want to lose all my trees, so I'm like, let's make them into trees and get the bushiness of the cedars out and leave them there, at least. But then it's an up or down. Do you need to get rid of it?
Yeah, you have to manage for it, because historically there would have been large herds of ruminant animals, so bison, that would have impacted and knocked back those cedars. There would have also been periodic fires that set them back. And then also the cedars and the mesquites and the persimmons and the prickly pear cactus and the thistles, things that we typically don't want to see, they always thrive in very disturbed areas where there's lots of bare soil, because it's nature's continuous urge to cover her skin. And so that's like the first thing that comes up. So long term, if you just managed it differently, you promoted more grass, you would have less cedar. But right now I'm in the camp of it's very contextual. Cedar is appropriate in some areas, whereas if it's just the thicket where it's only cedar so dense you can't even enter it, then you have to physically go in there and manually start removing some of it.
I hate cedar.
I
mean, for many reasons, man. The allergies,
cedar fever
suck.
Well, if you're trying to, I hate to bring the equipment in. You bring the skid steer in, bring a bulldozer in there. You can do that, but then now you're talking about like a 5-year or longer recovery from all of that.
Well, not if you do what he's recommending. Roll out that hay. And, plant.
But that's why I like to cut them back. If it's totally overgrown, you got to get the bushy ones out. But I like to try to keep them as trees. To pare them back so that water can get to the ground. You got shade. You can grow grass underneath there.
Exactly. Some of the areas underneath cedar trees are going to be your highest soil organic matter. And there's a new book that came out called Mountain Cedar Wanted Dead or Alive. And this is the book that everyone's talking about. All of the ecologists in the hill country that forever declared war on cedar are saying, hold on. This is a brand new thought process on how to co-create with cedar, how to live with cedar.
Right.
And I haven't read it yet, but I heard it's pretty mind blowing.
Well, I think the other thing is I've got some slopes, some pretty steep hills, on my property, and it's like I don't want to get rid of all those. Then you've got an exposed, hillside.
Yeah, way worse.
That's going to get worse. So I'd rather keep the trees and keep those those roots and
no, you're right
there.
And there's the golden cheek warbler, which is an endangered songbird that used to be endemic, very populated in this area, that now has lost its habitat, and now it's on the endangered list. And it needs cedar. It needs mature cedar, older cedar. And the other thing that when we talk about cedar and mesquites and some of the other trees we don't like in the hill country, we've never seen a 300-year-old cedar or 400-year-old cedar, but by the accounts of some of the settlers, they're the most gorgeous trees you could ever imagine.
I think when you cut them up nice and you let them grow, they look good. I think. They don't look like a weed. They look like a really nice tree.
And the hill country used to be covered in oaks, and we have oak wilt right now. But the first Europeans that came here clear cutted a lot of that for building the town, for logging, for extracting the resources, and so we dramatically disturbed the ecosystem, which was a savanna. It was kind of this mosaic ecosystem of grasslands and trees and forest, and we removed the forest. And so nature will always try to fill a void Nature abhors a monoculture or disruption. So the cedar is filling the void right now.
It's funny that you say that. This whole area, and I don't know if you've driven through this highway street whenever it rains and floods.
Oh yeah.
It gets really, really flooded, right? So this street is called Mesquite Street. So the gentleman that lives across the street from me, his grandfather, he lived on this land when they first settled here, and he would tell me that all of this was all mesquite before the pecans got planted, and it was all pretty much underwater. There was tons of water, like a marsh area. And so, it's funny because, I dig and, the ground is so soft and stuff from all the deposit, I guess, from whatever was left here. But you talk about how it's changed by all the trees being cut out. I mean, pecans are native, but there weren't as many on here. It's almost like this was a grove. If you drive down the street, you can see how they're all lined up and planted here. But, to go from a shitload of mesquites to no mesquites in this area is quite, jaw dropping. And so, it's changed a lot, and it's only been 150 years.
Dramatically changed. So when we hate on invasive species, which we always do, we kind of got to look in the mirror and say, "Oh shit,
did we do the right thing?
We might be an invasive species for this this system."
Oh shit!
I mean, we are introduced, and we've caused a lot of damage too. And so, just that reality and that being honest with ourselves, but. When we talk about even changes in weather patterns, like, 30, 40 years ago, the farmers out here did it very different because they had more consistent, more gentle rain. And that's changed. And what we don't even realize is, like when you remove all the trees and you till the land and it's bare soil, you're creating this heat effect, this urban heat island where we'll go out with a thermometer and we'll zap a neighbor's field that's been tilled and it's 140 degrees. And then we'll go to our grassland and it'll be 85 degrees. And so the more heat that we're emitting into the environment, it's not only uncomfortable for us, but it pushes away rain.
Yeah.
And then there's this thing called evapotranspiration too, which trees gift the environment. It's one of the reasons why it rains in the rainforest all the time. And so the more trees we've taken out, the less local rain that we're bringing in, cycling that water back into the atmosphere.
Wow. So maybe that we should cut those. We shouldn't cut those cedars. Maybe that's control. I don't know.
I'm just going to clean them.
Not all of them.
That's what I want.
Yeah, that's what I would say. In moderation.
Oh man.
Contextual.
For sure.
100%.
So
Taylor, do you have a favorite recipe that you like to cook for bison? You have something you recommend?
Yeah, I am. It depends on the crowd. I'll cook for my people.
Yeah.
If it's some people that are fancy, bison tenderloin, just the whole tenderloin on the grill, maybe 8 minutes, bloody inside, sea salt.
That's
Bam, baby.
Yeah.
That's going to be the best eating you could ever have. I mean, even like the raw bites in the middle are just heaven on earth. You don't even have to chew. And that's a grass-fed animal too. That could be a 10-year-old animal, and you could eat that with no teeth. It's that tender. and so that fits that crowd.
Yeah.
For my family, like I said, we're all about ground meat. We at Force of Nature, we make this product called the Ancestral Grind. So we put in the liver, the heart. I brought you guys some beef ancestral.
Nice.
And so you sneak in all the phytonutrients in a really subtle way to where kids don't notice, but they're still getting like that just highest degree of life affirming energy from the organs.
Sounds great.
That's my favorite meal to go to. But then I also, if I have the time or if I go out to eat and if I saw like ossobuco on the menu, bam, baby.
Yeah.
Right there.
Heck yeah.
Cooking in some
bison ossobuco?
Yeah.
Or any ossobuco.
Any
Yeah.
It's what you like, bro.
It's just, I don't want to make that myself all the time. But if someone else made it for me, I'll eat it.
Hell yeah.
So how old are you now, Tyler?
I think 42.
You think?
Pretty
Like
sure.
me, yes.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I mean, you've been doing this for how long now?
We've been out here in Fredericksburg for 8 years.
Yeah.
God bless Fredericksburg.
I know
we
it's
came here at the right time.
So how long do you think you can keep this up? I mean, what's your end game? What's going to happen when you wake up, you can't get up because your back is out and you can't, hurt the cattle or the buffalo?
Man, I'll try my hardest not to get to that point, but I think this isn't even work for me. It's not a grind. I love it. I wouldn't rather be anywhere else. I think it's just the highest calling to be co-creating with nature. I mean, it fills my soul and it recharges me spiritually and physically. And I just couldn't think of a better place to be. So, man, if I die, like looking at a bison, and then a mountain lion comes in and eats my body, that's like I lived a good life. Like that's the pinnacle.
My grandfather passed away. He had a heart attack feeding the hogs, man, out the ranch, and that's how they found him, and drove him to Fredericksburg, but it was too late. So it's like, do you want to live the rest of your life on the ranch doing what you're doing? Your end game isn't like, I want to create this other product and sell this and then just live off of whatever I create,
No, we got a great team running Force of Nature right now out of Austin. We have about 40 employees now, all over the country, and distributing that product. And the way we think about that company, it's growing impact. Mm-hmm. And so the more meat that we can sell and move, the more acres we can positively change. So the more acres we can regenerate, and that's a global effort. And so the legacy goal is to do 1 billion acres, to be influencing 1 billion acres of land. That's about half the land mass of the United States. Wow. But to do that on a global level, we think that's going to totally shift agriculture and the health of humanity.
Right.
And so, yeah, man, I don't want to like retire and like go to Florida or some shit like that, or like peace out on a beach or like go to Aspen. I just want to be here.
I think that's badass.
Well, I think what's cool too is the branding. I think a lot of farmers, ranchers, they think they look at it as their family, but they don't brand it.
Yeah.
And what you guys have done is you branded your property, your ranch, as well as the food business, which is the Force of Nature. So, but I think that people think about it as they're just like, that's land, but they don't take it to the next step about celebrating it as much as you guys do, and build the brand around it. And celebrate that. So I think it's hard for the next generation. I think they see it as, that just looks like a lot of work, versus creating that legacy around their family and the brand and what they're doing on their land. And I think that changes the scope of it. And I think it creates opportunity that people just aren't thinking about, is that it's more than just the work on the land.
Right.
This was kind of what Leo alluded to. When do you got to stop that? It's like, well, let's create a legacy around the brand and around really celebrating what we're doing.
I think to me, if meeting you today, it's like awareness. Like I wasn't aware of any of this, and it's sad for me to say I didn't know. I didn't know. It's like you commit a sin. It's like, oh shit, I didn't know. But in this case, this is like, it's worse because it's like I should have known better. It's like the simple shit that us humans should know of what to do with our land. I only have like my property. I have 2 little acres, and I've been approached by Becker and say, hey, let's grow this grape. Let's just do this because I need a little bit of this. And it's like, yeah, sure, I could do it, but it's like, no, I just want to do something else. I just want to sit back, enjoy it. It's hell, just cutting 2 acres sucks.
Yeah.
I can imagine what you're doing with all the land you're doing. So for me, it's awareness. If you can spread awareness the way you're doing on a global level, and using, the brand, like, Jay said, I mean, you're doing something meaningful with your life. And I don't see no reason why you'd want to stop doing what you're doing, because you're impacting a lot of souls out there. Yeah. And that's a big deal. I mean, it really is. That's like bigger than being president. It's like, seriously.
We create something.
Yeah,
for sure.
Totally, man.
Well, I think that we talked to Chef JC, over at Becker Vineyards, and, he's trying to find stuff that's local that he can, make recipes around, and without knowing about what options are available, you're just going to go to the big distribution guys and get your food from there and try to do the best you can with that. But knowing about what's here and then creating more of that for our fruits and vegetables and our meat and everything else, I think we need to, that's what makes it different. I mean, he'll talk more about that, but you go to out to Napa, and you can find stuff that's made there, and they celebrate that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where here, I think we're still
still young.
Yeah. We're still young, and you're still, getting it from Cisco and whoever else.
The farmer's market sucks here.
And you're not thinking about it, where I think if you know what the options are, you're getting something healthier and better. And
you can motivate other people to do what you're doing. It doesn't have to be on the same scale, but anything helps.
Yeah. It's all about resiliency too. I mean, I think back to like the pandemic days. So if there was a disruption in the supply chain right now, like some kind of fuel crisis or maybe some kind of EMP or some kind of digital attack that took out a lot of our infrastructure, the cities would run out of food in 2 or 3 days. People would be fucking eating their cats in 2 or 3 days. That's
true.
crazy. Any wild foods that we grow in our neighborhoods, like dandelions or mushrooms, we spray that shit with fungicides and herbicides. And so having the resilience and the relationship with someone that is a neighbor that can produce their own food, I mean, that is like ultimately that's freedom. Because without that, you were dependent on someone else to feed you. And so, like for me, I think that's a big reason to be in relationship and have communion with a rancher or a farmer.
Well, I mean, we got to start that now. I mean, those scenarios, you know, I mean, they may seem far-fetched or far off, but I don't, you know, anything could happen tomorrow.
We've had scares already.
And we had it. I mean, I think just simple stuff, you know, COVID, and you look at it and say you couldn't get eggs, right? And so we didn't have any problem. We had chickens, but you have to plan that a year, 2, 3 years before to make sure that you know what you're doing. You have your chickens protected. They're producing. You're feeding them right and everything else. And if you're not, you know, you can't do. You know, hey, you know, the EMP went off yesterday. I'm going to go get chickens. Like, you know, you're laid a dollar short. You know, so you've got to start that now. And I think all the relationships, it's bigger than that. You know, what can we do to get in the restaurants and other things, not just for yourself, but for the entire market. You know, how do we do that more locally?
Yeah, I'm inspired by. I mean, in World War II, there was what do they call those? The Freedom Gardens?
Victory Garden?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. So every American, like in their backyard with a half an acre, was growing 40% of their own food. I mean, that is autonomy. That is freedom. You know, like if you can do that, you can live the life that you want to live. And so we don't need a ton of land to do it. We can, and we don't necessarily need to be dependent on our local farmers and ranchers, even though I think we should support them, but we can also do it ourselves. Yeah, backyard chickens, great stuff. Yeah. Eggs are amazing.
I've got like 28 back here.
Hell yeah, dude!
Well, it's crazy, you know.
Surviving the apocalypse.
The mainstream is trying to scare you from doing that. You know, saying that you're going to get sick or blah 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 blah. It's like, you know, you're sick because you're not doing that.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
That's like the war they waged on raw milk. You know, it's like
anything pasteurized.
It's like people have been drinking raw milk for since the dawn of time, or since they were able to do that.
I think we talked about last time we started doing that, getting it out on the other side of Harper. And, you know, the first sip, I was like, you know, like, is this going to kill me? And now we drink. That's all we drink. You know, and it's so silly that you're scared of something that's actually good for you.
Nothing in Europe is pasteurized. That's why the cheese is so much better. Their milk, everything's so much better over there because they don't do that.
Well, our bread's a disaster here. My wife has been searching for something that doesn't, you know, make her feel ill every time she eats it. And so, and there's some guys at the farmers market here who are doing some interesting things. But you got to go all the way back to where's the wheat come from? Right. Because, you know, if it's got glyphosate all over it, that's what's horrible for you. And but to find that, you've got to drill really, really, really deep to make sure that it doesn't have that.
Yeah, for sure, bro.
So do you have some tips, you know, as chefs, you know, what can we do better? Obviously, you know, we need to really source our product, think a lot more about what we buy and what we sell on our menus. Taylor, is there any kind of education as, you know, what can we do to help your cause as well?
Sure, I think that's a great idea. Be in communion in relationship with the ecosystem that is your community and all the different parts people play. Creating culture, putting culture back in agriculture instead of agribusiness, where you just are like outsourcing everything to a distributor. Being in relationship is key. But then also just taking the opportunity to highlight what's on your menu in a way that differentiates it from anyone else in town or other restaurants. And I mean, like having seasonal, available, nutrient-dense food that was grown just a couple miles away that's a story to tell. And so I think whenever chefs and restaurateurs put out menus and they just kind of say like grass-fed beef, if it's grass-fed beef from Fredericksburg, they need to say grass-fed beef from Fredericksburg, maybe even like the family farm that it was raised on, maybe how far away it came. And then really just trying to think about probably the best way you can support a producer is instead of saying like, man, I love selling tenderloins. I can sell a bajillion tenderloins. How many tenderloins can you sell me from Rome Ranch? It's like more like the commitment that the producer needs is what can you do to help me get rid of the whole animal?
Yeah.
Like, I can sell tenderloins all day, but I struggle to sell the shanks or, you know, like there's 200 pounds of grind that now I have to figure out what to do with it. And so really taking that more holistic whole animal approach, that is the partnership that gets it done.
Yeah, that sounds badass. I'll take a fucking whole thing.
Well, that's what you get the barbecue business, So I want 2 briskets. So like, what about everything else from the animal? It's
right.
like, I gotta sell the steaks too. So.
Tenderloins as well, man. You don't even have to. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's we need to start thinking more like that, man. I need a fucking freezer out here now to hold the whole thing.
Well, that's cool, dude.
I'll get on that next week.
So what your long-term kind of goal, like you were talking about, is just to keep being an influence and using your product, the Force of Nature Meats, to influence other people how to go on this path of regenerative farming. Do you have any other people who are kind of in your space that you would recommend to our listeners, maybe who they can also kind of pick up, and kind of learn from?
Absolutely. Joel Salatin is the OG, the farmer that's really been pioneering this stuff for 30, 40 years. So he's got a wealth of information, a ton of books. There's a book by a guy named Gabe Brown. It's Dirt to Soil. That's one of my favorite books. It's just his journey through conventional industrial agriculture, changing his whole family kind of legacy on his family multi-generation ranch to regenerative. And his story is just incredible, but it's the story of everyone that's doing this. So I think that's great. Force of Nature, we have tons of content. So if you check out like our social media, our Instagram stuff, we really take pride in telling stories, celebrating land stewards, connecting people back to the source of their food. I think those are some great starts. And then everyone that has a Netflix account, there's a movie called, oh gosh.
Oh shit.
One of you guys have seen this.
Well, I'm sure we have, but I'm bad
Is
with
it
names.
Rotten?
No, it's Kiss the Ground.
Oh, Kiss the Ground. Okay, cool.
Kiss the Ground, dude. This is for real. This is exciting stuff. It really fills your heart with hope in this direction, getting away from industrial agriculture to a more virtuous system that we can, really honor nature and learn from her grace and her wisdom.
And you actually host your own wonderful podcast. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's true. Yeah, we have a podcast at Force of Nature called Where Hope Grows, and like you guys, we're grinding it out. I don't know, maybe like 50 episodes in, and it really is to highlight and to tell the stories of the people on the front lines. So I'm not so interested in talking to like the same kind of iconic celebrity type influencer that everyone else interviews. I just want to hear it from the people that are really like doubling down, getting their hands dirty. Throughout all the aspects, so that culture that is agriculture. So the producers, the processors, we talk to chefs time to time. I mean, everyone that's, the community, the doctors, the people that really are resonating with this and get it, and just amplifying those stories of hope, because we live in such a weird point in time where it's easy to get bogged down and discouraged and think that like as a species, humans are just horrible, destructive, innate beings. I don't believe that. Yeah. And so it's really like to re-energize people and connect them back to like that grace, that forgiveness that nature has, and really encourage people to move forward in a better light.
Man, that's badass. I didn't know about it until my brother over here told me he's got a podcast. Cool, I'm gonna go check it out. And it was like, for me, it's like super informative, so it's like things that, again, unaware, wasn't aware. And so to be able to listen and learn things that and it's not like I hated school, man. But when something intrigues me, like I can never get enough, man. It's like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. It's like shit. My wife's like, "When are you gonna go to sleep?" So I gotta listen. I gotta learn this stuff. And I mean, I applaud, man, everything that you're doing. I think it's badass, and I think that more of us and people listening can get on that bandwagon. Starting here in Fredericksburg, we can make things and big changes. And then if hopefully this could be a hub to start, affecting a lot of our surrounding areas and, the entire world at some point. I know there are people doing it out there, but it's nice to know that we have someone like you in this town that's, really pushing hard for change. And, this change, besides the changes that we have with all the, businesses, wineries, distilleries, it's a really nice, refreshing change. For or change.
Well, bro, I appreciate you guys, putting together these conversations and helping to amplify these messages of hope. And I mean, ultimately, like, we're just playing a small part of it, but this revolution really only happens with the consumer. So, like, to your point, it's only successful if people, our community, honors it and celebrates it and supports it. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, and it will never take off like it needs to.
That's badass. So, like, at the end of every show, we do a recipe. We're slacking a little bit, man. We're saying, hey, we're gonna do this recipe, but it's like we find it hard sometimes to pull off the recipe. But I'm gonna block out a day this next week, and I'm just gonna cook all the fucking recipes that I've said I was gonna cook.
I know.
So what are we gonna do, man, this time for this episode? What do you think?
I think something with Force of Nature meat.
Yeah.
Force of Nature meats.
Yeah.
You know.
So it would be cool. You know, it would be really cool that, I'll cook something. If anybody wants to cook something, Jay, you're here. Throw some stuff on cast iron. But for anyone listening, and we'll probably promote this on here. Maybe go out and buy some. You can buy some at, of course, Fresh Pickings. Where's another place locally? Yeah. Can you get it at HEB or not?
HEB and the Natural Grocers and Fresh Pickings.
So, I'll advertise this prior to the launch of this episode, but I think that, and even after the episode, I think if anybody wants to go out there and buy some to support and also create a menu, we'd love to post your recipe and picture if you take one on our social media, so we can show love and support for the guys over at Rome Ranch. And I think it would be, raise a little bit of awareness too, to what they're doing. I think that might be cool, man. I'll do something, you do something. I mean, I'm sure you have shitload of pictures and stuff of things you've done. Send me a recipe of one of your favorite things, and I mean, Jay will put.
We've been using it. We've been using it from HEB. We buy it, and the requirements through the FDA and stuff for regular ground beef is nasty.
Yeah,
and I don't know where the pig slime comes in, but it's pretty gross. And so between our own animals, when we run out of our own ground beef, we slaughter our own, and then we've been buying the Force of Nature ground beef, and it's awesome.
Nice.
It's
awesome.
So it's a little more expensive, but you're getting something.
You get what you pay for,
you're
brother.
Getting something that's quality. You're not getting the pig slime.
Yeah.
nobody wants that because it's nasty. I mean, you can see that it's nasty when you take it out. Even the organic stuff that's supposed to be good, it doesn't match up.
It's got the myoglobin. Yeah,
it's pretty nasty.
Yeah. Trust your instincts.
So by the Force of Nature, it doesn't have.
And it's also going towards a cause, a
badass cause. Yeah. You can only support and make it grow if you purchase.
Absolutely.
That's the bottom line, brother.
Oh, man. Sounds good. So we're gonna do something with the Force of Nature meat, and it could be whatever. It could be. I know he's got ground bison. I've seen the venison one at our HEB. I've seen some couple different kind of steaks maybe at one point. I don't know if they have them all the time, but yeah, be good.
You can get your hands on.
I'll bring y'all something fancier. I brought y'all peasant. Not peasant meat, because I eat peasant meat, but I brought y'all my favorite. I feel like for chefs, you guys gotta get down with like a tomahawk or something.
Dude, we've done it all. We've done it all. We want something different.
How about a venison tomahawk?
You can dude. We eat anything.
It's pretty good.
It's like us Mexicans. Whatever you put in front of us, we'll drink. It doesn't matter what the hell it is, man. I'll stay away from rubbing alcohol, though, man. Other than that, we're good. So.
Well, Taylor, it's been such a pleasure to have you here, man. I feel like I just got educated in a new way, and like I was just drinking from a fire hose with all your information and knowledge that you have. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, dude, he bitch slapped me. I woke up, man. I woke up pretty quick. So it's been a great experience, man. Thanks again, Jay. Thanks for coming, brother.
For having me.
Yeah, it's always nice to have, the third person.
Yeah.
When we have a cool guest, man. But yeah, it's been a blast.
Yeah, been fun. Absolutely.
Awesome. We'll see you next time, Chef.
For sure, man. Thanks again. Bye.
Adios.
Ciao.